A quiet shift in global trade is unfolding, one that's rerouting exports, reshaping alliances, and sidestepping Washington's leverage. As America doubles down on tariffs, Paris is moving in, building a trade corridor with Canada that spans agriculture, aerospace, and energy. This isn't just about goods crossing the Atlantic, it's a strategic realignment that could reshape global power, one that the U.S. may not be able to reverse. Today we're diving into why France is quietly replacing the U.S. with Canada. Welcome to Geo Capitalist, where we decode global wealth, one power shift at a time. If you want to see the hidden forces behind trade, infrastructure, and global finance, subscribe now. Because the stories shaping tomorrow's markets are unfolding right now. In early 2025, the foundations of North American trade began to crack. The trigger wasn't a sudden crisis, but a slow escalation, one that has been building for months. When Washington increased tariffs on key Canadian exports, from aluminum to agricultural goods, Ottawa responded with countermeasures targeting U.S. products worth over 30 billion Canadian dollars. The message was clear: Canada would not absorb the cost quietly. The impact was immediate. By May 2025, the share of Canadian goods heading to the United States fell to 68.3%, down sharply from an average of nearly 76% just a year earlier. At the same time, Canadian exports to other markets surged, hitting record highs in categories like gold, pharmaceuticals, and high-value manufactured goods. One country, however, began to stand out. France, traditionally a smaller trade partner, is now climbing the ranks as a strategic alternative. While the U.S. remains Canada's largest market, the French connection is growing in both volume and importance. With deep aerospace ties, expanding energy cooperation, and the framework of the CETA Free Trade Agreement, France offers Ottawa something Washington can't: tariff-free access to one of the world's largest consumer markets, backed by a political willingness to engage. For Canada's leadership, the calculus is shifting. Tariff pressure from the South is no longer just an economic nuisance, it's a catalyst for diversification. And France, with its industrial base, global networks, and influence within the EU, is emerging as one of the most promising destinations for Canada's next trade chapter. For decades, France occupied a secondary position in Canada's trade map. Important, but far from central. That is changing. In 2024, bilateral trade between the two nations reached $14.2 billion US dollars, with Canadian exports accounting for $4.4 billion US dollars and imports from France totaling $9.8 billion US dollars. Those numbers make France Canada's third largest EU export destination, trailing only Germany and the Netherlands, but closing the gap. The sectors driving this growth are telling. France's world-class aerospace industry has deepened its supply chain links with Canadian manufacturers, especially in advanced components and engineering services. Agricultural trade, from Canadian grains to French wine and dairy, has quietly expanded under CETA's reduced tariffs. And in energy, French firms are tapping into Canada's low-carbon power, LNG projects, and uranium resources, diversifying away from traditional suppliers. Political will is also playing a role. In March 2025, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney made Paris one of his first major stops, meeting President Emmanuel Macron to discuss strategic alignment in trade, security, and climate investment. The visit was more than symbolic. It signaled that Canada is not just looking for new buyers, but for long-term partners who share its industrial and environmental goals. For France, the attraction is mutual. Canada offers a stable, resource-rich alternative at a time when supply chains across Europe are being recalibrated under CBAM, the EU's carbon border adjustment mechanism. With U.S. trade policy becoming increasingly unpredictable, Paris sees Ottawa not as a fallback, but as a partner worth betting on. At the core of Canada's trade pivot to France is a single piece of policy architecture, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CTA. Provisionally applied since 2017, it slashes tariffs on 98 to 99% of goods traded between Canada and the European Union. For Canadian exporters, that means aluminum, beef, aerospace parts, and countless other products can enter France duty-free, a structural advantage the United States simply can't offer under current policy. But CETA is not the unshakable foundation it appears to be. Despite 8 years of provisional use, France, along with 9 other EU member states, has never fully ratified the agreement. The political friction is domestic. French farmers, trade unions, and some opposition parties argue that CETA undermines local standards on food safety, animal welfare, and environmental protection. Their resistance has stalled ratification in the French Senate multiple times, most recently in March 2024. This creates a paradox. On paper, CETA offers Canada and France one of the most liberal trade frameworks in the world. In practice, its long-term durability depends on the shifting winds of French politics. A change in government, or even a surge of farmer protests, could complicate access overnight. For now, however, the agreement remains a powerful lever for both sides. Canada uses it to secure market share in Europe's third-largest economy. France uses it to diversify its import base and strengthen ties with a politically like-minded G7 partner. But beneath the surface, the lack of full ratification is a reminder that this bridge, while strong today, is not yet built to last forever. In France, trade policy is never just an economic calculation. It's a political battlefield. The debate over CETA has exposed one of the sharpest divides in the country's domestic agenda: how to balance global market access with protecting local farmers and industries. In March 2024, the French Senate once again rejected full ratification of the agreement, citing concerns from powerful agricultural unions. Their argument is simple but potent. Canadian imports, especially beef and grain, could undercut French producers who face stricter regulations on environmental impact, pesticide use, and animal welfare. For farmers already grappling with rising costs and volatile weather, CETA represents not an opportunity, but a threat. This tension isn't new. Ever since CETA's provisional application began, demonstrations have flared in rural regions, with tractors blocking roads into Paris and banners warning against importing lower standards. Politically, it's a rallying point for both the far left and the far right, who frame the agreement as a surrender of sovereignty to globalization. Yet inside the Élysée Palace, the view is different. President Emmanuel Macron sees CETA as a strategic tool, one that positions France to secure resources, expand exports, and deepen ties with an ally outside the EU's traditional trade sphere. During Carney's 2025 visit, Macron called the deal win-win, stressing its benefits for both French farmers and Canadian exporters. The result is a precarious balance. Paris is advancing economic diplomacy with Ottawa while managing the political cost at home. Every new shipment of Canadian goods that docks in Le Havre carries not only cargo, but the weight of a debate that could redefine France's trade future. The Canada-France connection is no longer confined to trade statistics and tariff schedules. It's evolving into a broader strategic partnership. In June 2025, Ottawa and Brussels signed a landmark EU-Canada Defense and Security Pact, and France played a central role in shaping it. The agreement covers joint procurement for advanced defense systems, expanded cybersecurity cooperation, and coordinated maritime patrols, particularly in the increasingly contested Arctic routes. where both nations see long-term economic and security interests. For Canada, the move is part of a deliberate strategy to reduce reliance on U.S.-made defense technology and diversify its security alliances. For France, it's a way to strengthen Europe's collective capabilities while anchoring a like-minded G7 partner more firmly in its strategic orbit. Energy is another pillar of this cooperation. French companies are investing in Canadian LNG terminals, hydropower projects, and uranium supply chains, assets that align with France's low-carbon energy goals and provide insulation from future supply disruptions. In return, Canadian firms gain access to France's advanced engineering and nuclear technology expertise. These developments are about more than economics. They signal a shift toward an integrated relationship that blends commerce, security, and innovation, the kind of multi-layered alliance that can weather political turbulence. As Prime Minister Mark Carney framed it during his Paris visit, trade agreements are the foundation. Strategic cooperation is the architecture we build on top. If the trend continues, the Canada-France link could become one of the most resilient and multidimensional transatlantic partnerships of the coming decade, and one less dependent on Washington's approval. While container ships and commodity flows dominate the headlines, one of the fastest-growing links between Canada and France is invisible: digitally delivered trade. This includes everything from cloud computing and AI solutions to professional services, engineering design, and cultural exports like film production. In 2024, Canada's total goods and services exports reached $997 billion, but the standout performer was digital services, growing at double-digit rates and outpacing traditional sectors like automotive and mining. France has quickly emerged as a priority market. Its demand for high-value, low-carbon solutions dovetails with Canada's strengths in clean tech, fintech, and digital infrastructure. Under CETA's framework, these services face minimal regulatory barriers, allowing Canadian firms to compete directly with European incumbents. For example, Montreal's AI research hubs are now collaborating with French counterparts in Paris and Toulouse on applications for aerospace, energy efficiency, and urban planning. In turn, French digital consultancies are winning contracts in Canada's smart city projects and sustainable transportation systems. This exchange is not just an economic add-on. It's a hedge against volatility in goods trade. Physical exports can be disrupted by tariffs, strikes, or geopolitical events. Digital services, by contrast, cross borders at the speed of light and with far less exposure to physical bottlenecks. For policymakers in both capitals, the expansion of the digital corridor is a sign that the Canada-France partnership is moving beyond transactional trade. It's becoming a test case for how two advanced economies can integrate physical and digital value chains to mutual benefit, creating a layer of interdependence that is harder to dismantle than any shipping contract. Step back from the trade figures, and a larger pattern comes into view. Canada's tilt toward France is not a single transaction. It's part of a deliberate repositioning in a world where economic power is becoming more fragmented. The United States remains Canada's largest customer, but its unpredictability under escalating tariff regimes has weakened the sense of permanence in that relationship. France, by contrast, offers both political stability and strategic reach. As a central player in the European Union, it can act as a gateway to a market of over 440 million people. Its global network, from Africa to the Indo-Pacific, aligns with Canada's own push to diversify trade routes and investment flows. The June 2025 Defence Pact with the EU, energy cooperation projects, and the accelerating digital trade corridor are not isolated moves. They're part of a coherent blueprint for a more balanced geopolitical portfolio. This reset also has symbolic weight. For decades, Canada's international economic narrative was defined by its proximity to and integration with the United States. By deepening ties with France, Ottawa is signaling that its future will not be bound by geography alone. It's a subtle but unmistakable message. In the competition for reliable partners, cultural affinity, aligned values, and shared strategic goals can matter as much as border crossings. If this trajectory holds, the next decade could see Canada positioned not just as America's northern neighbor, but as a transatlantic bridge state, equally embedded in North American and European economic systems. The Canada-France relationship now sits at an inflection point. On one hand, the framework for deeper cooperation is firmly in place, from CETA's tariff reductions to the June 2025 EU-Canada Security Pact. On the other, the political and economic landscape in both countries remains fluid. France's full ratification of CETA is still unresolved, and shifts in domestic politics could either accelerate or stall its momentum. Beyond the immediate trade flows, the partnership's future will be shaped by three key variables. First, the pace at which digital and services trade grows, creating a layer of economic interdependence that's harder to unwind. Second, the degree to which both nations can align their climate and industrial policies, ensuring that energy and resource cooperation remains compatible with long-term decarbonization goals. And third, the resilience of their political alignment, particularly if new U.S. trade pressures force Ottawa to make difficult choices. For now, the trajectory is clear. France is no longer a peripheral partner in Canada's global strategy. It's becoming a central pillar, offering market access, strategic alignment, and a shared vision for a diversified economic future. Whether this remains a quiet shift will depend on how quickly it delivers visible results and how closely Washington is paying attention. And there you have it. If you found this breakdown valuable, watch our next video. It connects directly to what's unfolding. And don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us decode these global shifts without compromise. Let us know in the comments, is Canada simply diversifying, or is this the start of a permanent economic pivot? Either way, the world is watching. This was why France is quietly replacing the US with Canada. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.